All right, this is a burning question. How much do we ask for?
Just tell me the number.
Just tell me, like.
What I can tell you is that in the offers that people have received at Learners Guild so far, the numbers have been between 70 and 120. 70 to 120 is the range, which is a pretty wide range of folks here. And it's worth noting that I think both of the ones on the lower end of that I'm aware of were for nonprofits. Nonprofits often pay less than private companies do. And typically, not always, but often the culture at a nonprofit is what people are going for. They like the feeling of doing mission-oriented work. The culture, it tends to be, in many cases, compared to like a startup, for example, the work-life balance tends to be better. They're like really good at like, hey, it's 5:30, go home. You know, what are you still doing here? Like it can just be like a more just slower pace and things like that. So what you specifically as an individual should ask for, I have never worked with you. I don't know. But that's the range that we have so far. I would say, like, I would encourage everybody here to have your absolute floor be 80. I think that all of you should be able to do that if you complete the program, the absolute floor. I think that many of you will get more. And that's just a random number that I pulled out of the air right now that could change in the next 3 months if the stock market tanks, if a bunch of startups go belly up that were like on a good path. Like, this stuff is very volatile in the Bay Area in particular. So Glassdoor is another super valuable resource. Like, what is somebody with 0 years of experience who's coming essentially right out of an education program worth?
It just seems so strange to me that we're going to go to a job and say, oh, all right, I want 120K. And that's just so far from what I'm used to.
So a living wage in the city of Oakland is like $50,000. That's,
yeah.
So it's a living wage, right? You're doing one of the highest demand jobs in the country and in this geographic region in particular. So if like 100 or 120 sounds off the charts to you, just remember that, like, if you're making below $50,000 in the city of Oakland, you're probably not making ends meet.
Yeah, okay, so from my perspective, right, and maybe you guys can give us tips on how to not be nervous, because I come from, before this, I was making $35K with no benefits, living on the peninsula.
Yeah.
80K sounds, whoa, that's more than twice the amount that I was making before. Plus benefits, plus health insurance, plus all this stuff. Like, I don't know how I'm going to go to a place and they say, oh, all right, here's 120. It's like, well.
Okay, so your answer, your question is actually not what should I ask for. Your question is, how can I get the confidence to know that I'm really worth this number that you're telling me I should ask for?
Yes.
And my recommendation to you is look at Glassdoor. Do a Google search for the number of unfilled software engineering jobs in the country compared to the number of computer science graduates that are going to graduate this year. Mm-hmm. Look at the delta there. The supply and demand thing is real. And if your previous job was paying you $35,000, chances are it was not in as high demand as this job. And supply and demand is a real thing. That's why it costs $5,500 to rent a 1-bedroom apartment in San Francisco, because the NIMBYs don't let any developers build anything. So there's no supply. So the demand goes up and the price goes up. This is like the most basic economic stuff that exists. You are worth a lot of money if you can code. I want you to be confident in that. If you know how to do these incantations in a text editor that are basically minting cash for a company, then you should be paid for it. And it's not about being arrogant. It's not about, confident and arrogant are really different things. Like, you should recognize that the skills that you're learning here, we are confident that we're giving you skills that are very applicable in this industry and are going to make companies a lot of money, and they need you to do this work, and you're qualified to do it. And yes, you're beginners and you should set expectations accordingly. You should say, hey, I'm a beginner. I'm looking for mentorship. This is a whole separate conversation than offers and negotiation. I think there's probably a confidence workshop coming. Mm-hmm. Is that true? Mm-hmm. So I won't most likely be leading that one. I might sit in on it and I have ideas, but I can tell you, as somebody who's done this for now 35 years, I've been writing software. It's not an absurd amount of money. It might sound like it if you're coming from a different industry and not making as much, but like, You deserve it if you can make the software work.
And it like I just don't know how much the experience is worth. You know, like they say, okay, software engineer at this company makes 120. Okay, but I don't have any years of experience. Well, that might be like someone with 5 years of experience on Glassdoor.
Okay.
You know,
so be honest about that, right? Like if they say, you know, you could say, what does the average software engineer make? What does the average like entry level software engineer make? Because it's entry level, right? Entry level means no experience. Okay, so
yeah, it's just a lot of tensions in my mind because entry level could also mean other month programs where we've been coding for a year.
There's been
That's right.
entry level with 2 years or 1 year experience. I'm like that.
Yeah. I mean, no, like Jeffrey said before, that the offers that folks have gotten so far coming out of this program have been between 70 and 120. 70 and 80 being for the nonprofit sector, and 80 plus being for profit. So that, yeah, seriously. And I know it's a big deal. It's especially if you've never made that much money before. It really is. But you can start to ground, and we're past our time, so we should probably wrap up. But you can just really start to ground in actually the reality of what your peers have been offered for positions where they're applying the same skills that you all have been developing.
The last thing I want to say on this is just in terms of competence. There are computer science programs that are like typically a 4-year computer science program. Sometimes you'll find like a shorter accelerated, you know, community or trade school program like DeVry or something like this. Sometimes has more accelerated computer science-y type things. And then there are boot camps, which are anywhere from like 8 to 12 weeks. And then there's Learner's Guild, which is meant to be a university alternative. Not university alternative in the sense that we're like a university. It's an alternative to university because what we believe is we're preparing you better than a 4-year computer science program would. And now I don't stand here saying that as a joke. Like the reason it's better is because like, especially in this new model, phases 1 and 2, you're kind of acquiring skills. Phase 3, you're like working on real projects. Phase 4, you're working on a live code base. Phase 5, you're learning, you're filling any gaps that you think you missed along the way. You're continuing to work on real world projects. You're getting your portfolio ready. You're learning concepts that you probably don't need in the job, but you need to know in the interview, like merge sort versus bubble sort and a depth first search to traverse a graph and all these things that like you'll probably never use as a software engineer, but they're going to ask you in the interview just to make sure that you're like, I don't know, it's stupid. But you have, by the time you leave here, you have worked on real code bases. You'll have worked on a live code base with a technical lead overseeing your work for months, for a few months. You're basically getting an internship as part of this program. So you have some experience coming out of this program. You have a few months that a 4-year computer science graduate from Stanford does not have. Okay, it doesn't mean that there's going to be bias out there, right? I don't want to like set your expectations that there's no bias. Like I think that folks coming from programs like ours are going to face bias. There's a lot of an initial filter at big companies that is just like 4-year computer science degree from these 10 schools. And that's their filter. You can't get past their resume filter unless you find some backdoor or some special program. And LinkedIn has their Reach program that like you can like kind of get in if you know, and they're, so companies are starting to do this, but so it's not that the filters don't exist, but like when you talk to me, like I went to a 4-year computer science degree. 1 year of it was valuable, and I didn't have any real world experience other than what I was doing in my free time outside of it. Whereas we've designed this program to be apprenticeship, where by the time you finish, half your time here was spent working on projects, not lectures and exercises and videos, and like you're actually building stuff. So you're going to hit the ground running on that day. You can like if forget salary, forget everything else. If the company says like, hey, I need you to build me a dashboard that is basically like hitting these 5 APIs, storing the data in a database, presenting it in different color tabular form, and that looks like this mock-up. Can you do it? Mm-hmm. Can you do it? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's worth $120,000 in the Bay Area.
What? See, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
That's
whether or not it's fair or reasonable is another thing. Like, should nurses be paid more for wiping people's butts? Absolutely, right? Like,
should teachers be paid more?
Should teachers be paid more?
Don't get me started.
Yeah, it's not fair.
Uh-huh.
Okay, like it's absurd how highly paid software people are, but software is eating the world.
It is.
You know,
I feel it.
Amazon
I
is
realize
Whole
that,
Foods.
yeah. Like literally. But yeah, it's just amazing to see like what this is and like
Look,
the transition
just
from this
stop.
into this thing.
Just don't derive your confidence. Don't let the numbers scare you. Like derive your confidence from what you're capable of doing. Can you hit a bunch of APIs? Can you store that data in a database? Can you query it in a performant way? Can you display it on a web page? Can you format that web page to look a different way? That is web development. That's full stack web development. Can you do all those things? Are you confident in your ability to do all those things? That's where your confidence comes from. It should not come from any of these numbers, which are just going to change over time, but you're always going to know what you can do. And so when you're talking to a company, you'll be like, look, what am I worth to you? I can do these things. Give me a coding challenge. You've done so many coding challenges. By the time you're done here, you're going to crush it, right? I think the reason that our people who finish Learner's Guild are going to perform on average better than other boot camps and maybe even better than computer science graduates is because they're going to give you a coding challenge. You're like, great, another coding challenge. I've done like 8,472 of these in the last 40 weeks. So great, give me another coding challenge. I'm ready. And I didn't know how to do any single one of them when it was given to me. I had to figure it out right in that moment. And software engineering is all about just figuring out how to solve a problem that you've never solved before when it's given to you, using the internet as a resource, a keyboard in front of you, and hopefully some people around you to help, even at a company, right? Even at that company, you don't have to know everything. You just have to know how to learn quickly. And if you know how to learn quickly in any technical realm, you're worth a lot of money. And like 2-3 years down the road, you may decide web development isn't for me. I'm going to go do mobile development, or I'm going to go do data science. And you'll be able to. It'll be easier to do that than it was to change your career from something to web development. Like this is your on-ramp. Mm-hmm. That's why we're doing this. So you're worth it. Don't sell yourself short. If you can do that stuff, you can do that stuff. And that's what the market pays in this area for that. It pays less in Ichabod Falls, North Dakota, or Detroit, or other places. But in the Bay Area, I'm talking about, by the way, salaries in the Bay Area. So like they are inflated for this stuff. Like I don't know that the offer from Ship, if Ship was based in the Midwest, would have been as high. Like it probably wouldn't have, right? The cost of living here is insane. Who's in a rent-controlled thing? Yeah, I mean, what if you weren't?
Personally, know the landlord.
Yeah, some people are living at home because they can't afford to live anywhere else, living with their folks.
I wanted to give you a slow clap for that motivational speech.
Yeah.
Oh my God.